Thank you, Senator Johnson. You have heard the open on the motion to override the veto. The floor is now open for discussion. Those wishing to speak, we have Senator Chambers, Rogert, and Aguilar. Senator Chambers, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, this is Senator Johnson's bill. He is approaching the veto in the way that he must. Certain allegations and contentions were offered by the governor, so Senator Johnson is more or less constrained to address those items even though they lack merit, even though they are invalid. Were he not to address them, it would seem that by not confronting them, he's conceding that they have value and justify the veto. It's not my bill. I don't have to deal with those straw persons. I can look at the issue. This has become a political, not a health issue. Now, I've been told that my view that the children in the district that I represent, and I don't mean just a neighborhood, I'm talking about poor children throughout the state. My conviction that the use of fluoride has diminished the number of cavities they have. I've been told that that's my imagination and I've been conned, that it's all psychological. And I say this, if we've reached the point where psychology can prevent cavities, then I'm for that. And if the psychological conviction is based on the presence of fluoride in the water, let technology combine with those advancements in mental health and produce a complete product which will get at what we want, which is dental health, oral hygiene. I'd like to ask Senator, I hate to do this, I'd like to ask Senator Preister a question or two.
Senator Preister, would you yield?
I would be most happy to.
The reason I said what I did, Senator Preister and I are not often on opposite sides, but when that occurs, he definitely is wrong. He strayed from the teachings, and I'm going to try to bring him back to the fold. Senator Preister, in all seriousness, these questions are being asked. Was there ever a time when you were convinced that fluoride in drinking water helped prevent cavities in children?
There was a time when I didn't know, so I was open and unsure. I wasn't opposed to it always.
All right. Now, you developed that opposition as you came into information that made you believe, as you've told us over and over, that fluoride not only when ingested is not healthful, but it can actually be harmful. You came to that conclusion after obtaining certain information which was persuasive to you. Is that right or wrong?
That is correct, Senator.
Before you had that information, that was not your opinion, was it?
That's correct.
Am I entitled to follow my mind and operate on the facts as I understand them to be?
Of course.
Would you want me, knowing me as you do, to change my view simply because somebody I respect, as I respect you, would have a position other than the one that I hold?
I would hope that I would have been more persuasive so that I could have persuaded you to change your mind.
But you would want me to be persuaded and not just blindly like a lemming follow you because of the respect that I have for you.
And because I respect you, Senator Chambers, I would want you to do what you believed, truly believed on your own, and came to your own conclusion was the right thing to do.
Thank you for that. Now, do you mean to tell us, and I haven't heard you say this, that there is only one credible or reasonable view that can be taken on this subject and that all legitimate controversy has been resolved?
I don't know that I've said all legitimate controversy has been resolved, but I felt it important that I was a voice giving information of other than it being a benefit.
So you would concede that there may be people with credible credentials, training, experience, knowledge, and information who may hold an opposite position to yours?
There certainly are those people that hold that opposite position.
And you've never suggested that? What did you say, Mr. President? Oh.
30 seconds.
Well, I will stop now. I couldn't ask a question which he'd have time to answer. Thank you, and thank you, Senator Preister. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Aguilar. And Senator Preister, if you are willing to continue discussing this with me.
Senator Preister, would you yield?
I am willing. Yes, I yield.
Senator Preister, having agreed that let me ask a direct question. I think I understood you to suggest that reasonable minds can differ on this question.
Reasonable minds can differ on most questions.
All right. Now, is it your view that the ingestion of fluoride in water all these years has not been of any therapeutic value as far as preventing or limiting tooth decay to the children who have received fluoride in the water?
There are studies that have done double blinds in Indian reservations, Native American environments with poor children there, and they have shown that in those communities where fluoride was used compared to those that did not receive fluoride, there was no difference in the number of dental caries. So based on that, I think there are studies that can say it has not done the good that we've been told it did.
Senator Preister, have there been any credible studies of areas of cities such as those where I would live and the people I represent to see if in reality those children have benefited or not? And here's what I'm getting to. If a test is conducted on a certain population whose living conditions, diet, and other things can have a part to play, you might arrive at conclusions valid for that group, but it may not be applicable in the same way to other groups. So, have there been studies made of poor children in black communities and white communities which would demonstrate that no value has been received from fluoride in the water?
There are lots of studies. I don't know that I could tell you of a specific study either way.
So they go both ways.
There's a lot of conflicting data and different studies, and one of the things that you well know, when you have data and you don't like it, you challenge the credibility of the source. So some of that has been happening in some of the studies.
Thank you, and that's all I will ask you at this point, Senator Preister. Members of the legislature, I had very serious problems with my teeth when I was younger, and I brushed my teeth. Fluoride came along after I was no longer a child. My children with whom they played, did not have problems with cavities that I, my brothers and sisters, and the children growing up with me had. And I lived in the projects. My children, when they were young, lived in the projects and spent many years there. So I had direct contact with these children. I was concerned about their health and what kind of programs might be available to assist them. I think a sound mind and a sound body is the ideal to be striven for. And I'm convinced that fluoride has been of help. If I were not convinced, I would not support it. I have seen nothing that is so convincing as to change my mind. Senator Preister has mentioned certain organizations which no longer support fluoride in the water. But I cannot, simply because of what those organizations have taken as a position, go contrary to what my own experience and observation will tell me. So at this time, I still believe fluoride is of value, and I will support the override. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Chambers, your light is next, and you're recognized.
Members of the legislature, Mr. President, let me make clear what I meant when I said this has become a political issue. I'm not implicating Senator Preister. I'm not going to say it's not political with him, but I don't think he has taken a political approach in his presentation. The governor is as much a politician as any of us is. Each one of us is a politician. The legislature is a political body. The governor's office is a political office. When statements are made about money and the kinds of things that Senator Johnson adequately counteracted, that makes it clear that we're dealing with political questions. If I were going to conduct myself in that fashion, what I would do is put some water on my finger and go out when the wind is blowing and see which direction it's coming from and how strong it is, and that would guarantee what I would do. My good friend Senator Carper, as much as I've come to respect him, in spite of the fact that as a meat merchant, he doesn't know the difference between sausage and hot dogs, he has another failing. He will often tell us that he got a postcard, and that changed his vote. He got several postcards. I wasn't here long enough to do the research necessary to find out how many postcards he needed to get to sway him, because if he'd have once told me that, I would have had enough postcards sent to him to double that number, and he would have voted the way I wanted him to vote. And I call him my postcard friend. The point I'm using all that to get at is to get at this. I believe children's health is at issue here. I don't believe I'm superstitious. If I find something to be based on superstition, I don't automatically reject it. I will look at it to see if there is a grain or kernel of validity into it, which people exaggerated and turned it into a superstition, which if you strip all the superstition away, you will find something that has validity, even of a scientific nature. But there's no magic associated with it. There's nothing supernatural associated with it. But when these chemicals, as some people want to call them, and that's what they are, interact with a human being, not every chemical produces a bad or deleterious result. Some of them produce very wholesome and healthful results. I think fluoride is such an item. I think the governor took a political position. I think that his veto is not grounded on facts of the kind that should cause those of us who supported this bill to change. The governor is not a scientist. The governor is not a dentist. We made our vote all the way across the board on what we were convinced is a reality. Nobody got us up here and told us that some guy went under his coat and pulled something out and whispered magic words and shook it in there and put it in the water and the kids had no cavities. That's not what we voted on. And I cannot understand, and I will not understand, if between the time we sent this bill to the governor's desk and it comes back here with his veto, that we have been totally and completely turned around so that we change what we had as a conviction. Senator Preister, as incorrect as is his conclusion, in my opinion, presented information that was far more substantive, that had much more of a credible basis in reality than anything the governor said in his letter.
1 minute.
We had sufficient votes to override a veto. The same people who cast those votes are here today. And I think the way we voted then, when our minds were clear, we had had the debate, we should stick with those votes and override this veto. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, Senator Carper, I'm tempted. But from childhood upward, I was told, yield not to temptation. But a writer whom I respect very greatly, Oscar Wilde, said the best way he gets rid of temptation is to yield to it. So I have respected opinions on both sides of the question. And on this fluoride issue, there are respected people and opinions on both sides. But when Senator Preister mentions a number of people who work for the EPA taking a position, the number does not determine the validity of the position. Sometimes there can be such a thing as a majority of one. It is possible that one person saying something which 999 other people disagree with could be right. What I'm wondering is why there's not some attempt, since we've had, if you want to call it that, an experiment nationwide involving children across all kind of lines, racial, ethnic, socioeconomic. Why is not there some kind of testing done to see if you detect in these children the harm from fluoride that Senator Preister's research has convinced him is there? If we didn't have such a long history of the use of fluoride, it might be different, but that history is there. If my brain is slower than other people's, and I'm sure that it is, I say it's not from fluoride. Maybe if I'd gotten more fluoride, Senator Carlson, I'd be a bit sharper than I am now. I am not in a position to alter my vote when I have not changed my mind. When Senator Carper made crystal clear how easy it is to opt out of this, that should carry some weight. And if there's to be an attempt to opt out, there will be in that community a discussion of fluoride. Maybe nobody is informed, maybe some people are, but there will be an awareness of it and a conscious, deliberate decision by the people whose children are affected to say, I think this will hurt my child, it will not help my child, so I don't want this in the water. Because I'm convinced that it has been beneficial. It's not a miracle drug. It's not a miracle cure. All of these things should be used in conjunction with good dental health practices. If it cannot be shown that all of this harm is showing up in the children who've been using fluoride, then it's just so much academic, even scholarly debate back and forth. But they're not starting where Aristotle said they should start, and that's with observation. You look at what it is you're dealing with. You learn as much as you can about that, and then when you reach the maximum, you can learn from it. But you're going to draw some conclusions so that you can operate. Then you extrapolate from what you know and start forming conclusions about what is most likely to happen when you get beyond that area where you have empirical evidence. And I think the empirical evidence can be gathered from those who have used fluoride, and that has not been done. Before I go further, let me ask Senator Preister a question or two if he will respond, Mr.
Senator
President.
Preister, will you respond to a question from Senator Chambers?
Certainly.
Senator Preister, I may be talking what I don't know. Have there been studies on a broad scale throughout the country of representative groups of children who have used fluoride and those who used it when they were younger to see if these deleterious effects have taken hold and can be shown to exist in those people?
Not that I know of.
Thank you. Mr. President, if I'm going to tell you that drinking water will kill you and everybody has drunk water and nobody's dead, you going to take the evidence of your experience and your eyes, or are you going to take what somebody tells you might possibly happen? Stick with the facts and the evidence and err on the side of helping the children, if there's an error, which I think there is not.
Time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers. Senator Chambers, for what reason do you rise?
I would ask for a call of the House.
Roll call vote has been requested. The question is?
Reverse order.
In reverse order. The question is, should LB 245 become law, notwithstanding the objection of the governor? Mr. Clerk, please read the roll in reverse order.
31 ayes, 4 nays, 14 not voting, Mr. President, on the motion that Legislative Bill 245 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor.
LB 245 becomes law.